Chapter 4 John Smith and the Powhatan. Shortly after arriving in Virginia, the king's letter was read out loud. The king wanted the settlers to find a good place to settle, where they would not be seen by passing Spanish ships. The land should also be near a wide, deep river. This colony was to be named Jamestown, after King James. The settlers were to search for gold and silver as soon as they could. Do you notice the illustration on this page? Please describe it and explain what you see. What did King James want the settlers to do? What did the settlers name their colony? A number of men had been chosen to run the colony. One of them was a young adventurer named John Smith. John Smith was a natural leader, but the other chosen leaders of the colony didn't like John Smith. He was not rich and powerful. They refused to treat such an ordinary person as an equal. Instead, they left John Smith tied up on one of the ships. An adventurer is someone who looks for and enjoys dangerous or risky experiences. A natural leader is someone who has the qualities of a good leader as part of their personality. People want to follow a natural leader. A natural leader does not have to work extra hard to win people's respect. An equal is someone who is treated the same as everyone else. Who was John Smith? Why didn't the other chosen leaders like John Smith? What did the other leaders do to John Smith? This was a big mistake. The other leaders chose swampland to settle on. The land was also bad for farming. The damp swampland was good for one thing, though: mosquitoes that carried a disease called malaria. The settlers were also not near clean drinking water. To add to their problems, the Powhatan, the Native Americans whose land the settlers had taken, were not happy that they had arrived. Swampland is land that is always wet. Mosquitoes are flying insects that can bite. They can carry diseases such as malaria, which can give people very high fevers. Why was it a mistake to leave John Smith tied up on one of the ships? What kinds of problems did settling on swampland cause? Why were the Powhatan unhappy with the settlers? Eventually, John Smith became the leader of the colony. Even though half the settlers died in the first few months, John Smith persuaded those who survived to get to work. They chopped down trees and they built homes. A strong log wall was built around the settlement. What eventually happened to John Smith? What happened to half of the settlers? What did John Smith persuade the remaining settlers to do? The first winter was very difficult for the settlers. They were all cold and very hungry. John Smith knew they would have to make peace with the Powhatan. They needed to trade with the Native Americans for food. John Smith set off to do just that. Why was the first winter difficult for the settlers? What did John Smith decide to do? John Smith became friends with Chief Powhatan, the leader of the Powhatan, and with his daughter, Pocahontas. The Powhatan agreed to trade corn and meat for axes and blankets. The food the Powhatan gave to the settlers was enough to last them through the winter. In the spring, those who had survived were able to plant their own crops. Survived means continued to live, even when there were difficulties. Crops are plants that are grown in large amounts. Crops are harvested or picked to eat as food. Who were Chief Powhatan and Pocahontas? What did the Powhatan agree to do? How did the trade help the settlers? Pocahontas helped the settlers a lot. She encouraged her father to give the starving settlers food, and she may even have saved John Smith's life. After she married a settler by the name of John Rolfe, Pocahontas traveled all the way to England and met King James. How did Pocahontas help the settlers? What happened to the settlers when they first arrived in Virginia?